Prepare yourselves, because what you are about to witness is not just a series of border incidents. It is a chilling prelude to a potential conflict that could engulf Eastern Europe. We are not merely discussing isolated events. We are examining the calculated escalation of Russian aggression, a relentless probing of NATO's resolve that is pushing the region to the brink. Over the course of this video, we will dissect the increasingly volatile situation, tracing the series of alarming airspace violations, and understanding the dire implications of each incursion. The narrative is structured into 6 pivotal chapters, each revealing a new layer of complexity in the standoff between Poland and Russia. Buckle in and stay with us until the very end, because the final chapter will reveal a twist that is guaranteed to send shivers down your spine. We urge you to watch to the very end, because the conclusions we draw are absolutely critical. Chapter 1: The Shadow over Poland. The war in Ukraine has cast a long, menacing shadow over Eastern Europe, with Russia's military actions extending beyond the battlefield. NATO, with its collective defense, closely monitors the situation. As Ukrainian forces exert mounting pressure on the Russian army, the Kremlin seeks to divert attention by intentionally testing the boundaries of neighboring countries. These actions are clearly aimed at provoking NATO's response. Among the most recent provocations is a series of violations of Polish airspace, incidents that have triggered alarm bells across the alliance. These were not simple accidental incursions. They represent a deliberate attempt to test the limits of Western resolve and to gauge the reaction of NATO. The ripple effects are already being felt, with Poland being increasingly on high alert. This series of airspace breaches has escalated alarmingly, pushing the situation to a critical point where miscalculation could lead to a devastating consequence. The initial incident, a stark warning, occurred near the border with Ukraine and caused Poland to immediately scramble its fighter jets in a swift response. Chapter 2: A Pattern of Provocation. The escalation of the conflict is marked by a series of audacious airspace violations, each seemingly more provocative than the last. The first significant event occurred when an anti-aircraft missile, which was assumed to be launched from Ukraine, landed on Polish soil near the border and claimed the lives of 2 innocent civilians. The chilling reality of the war had suddenly become terrifyingly personal. This incident exposed the vulnerability of Poland's borders and was just the start of a series of deliberate encroachments on its sovereignty. Shortly after, another Russian cruise missile, the Kh-55, without an active warhead, penetrated deep into Polish airspace, a clear sign of Moscow's aggressive intentions. What is more alarming is that the Polish authorities only reported the finding of the missile wreckage months after the event, revealing a level of internal miscommunication and cover-up that sparked outrage from the opposition parties and the general public. The discovery of this missile wreckage in Poland, months after the fact, only further fanned the flames of discontent and highlighted the seriousness of the matter. The question is, how can Poland hope to defend itself when it cannot even detect that the enemy has crossed the border? Chapter 3: Deception and Denial. The initial reactions from Polish authorities were not only slow, but also deeply controversial. The Minister of Defense at the time, Mariusz Błaszczak, initially claimed that he was unaware of the missile incident until the wreckage was discovered by a civilian. This claim was swiftly refuted by Deputy Defense Minister Cezary Tomczyk, who stated that Błaszczak was well aware of the incident from the day it had occurred. These contradicting accounts led to accusations of deception and cover-ups, further fueling public anger and mistrust. It became clear that there was a serious lapse in communication and transparency within the Polish military establishment. Amidst the political storm, questions about Poland's defense readiness and the competence of its leadership were raised, eroding public confidence. As the situation unfolded, it was clear that the problems were not only technical, but they were also political in nature and were directly related to the lack of transparency in the governing institutions. This lack of transparency was a signal that something was very wrong in Warsaw. Chapter 4: Escalating Breaches. The series of Russian incursions into Polish airspace did not end there. On December 29, 2023, an unidentified aerial object crossed into Polish airspace and vanished from radar, further raising suspicions of a deliberate challenge to Polish sovereignty. This incident was followed by another incursion on March 24, 2024, where a Russian long-range missile flew into Polish airspace, showcasing Russia's blatant disregard for international borders. Most recently, a Shahed drone entered Polish airspace, confirming the persistent nature of these violations. These repeated incidents demonstrate a consistent pattern of aggressive probing, with Russia seemingly testing Poland's defenses and the collective resolve of NATO. The regularity of these violations suggests a calculated strategy to keep Poland on edge and to challenge its capacity to protect its own territory. The situation was further aggravated by the discovery of missile fragments that had been fired from Ukrainian territory. The whole situation was becoming increasingly confusing and uncertain. What was a fact and what was deliberate propaganda? The lines were becoming blurred. Chapter 5. Poland's response. Faced with continuous violations, the Polish government has adopted a much more aggressive stance. Despite initial opposition from NATO, Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has stated that Poland is prepared to intercept incoming Russian missiles and drones over Ukrainian territory, thus underlining Warsaw's constitutional duty to protect its citizens. This position reflects a growing concern about the inadequacy of NATO's current response and the need for proactive measures to safeguard Polish airspace. Poland, in a bilateral security agreement with Ukraine, is now actively exploring options for shooting down missiles and drones over Ukrainian territory, if these are bound for Polish soil, marking a major shift in its strategic approach. While NATO has dismissed such calls due to the fear that it will lead to a more direct conflict with Russian forces, Poland seems to be increasingly willing to take matters into its own hands. Poland is not prepared to stand by and allow Russia to violate its territorial integrity without facing consequences. Chapter 6. The fortress is rising, or is it? In response to Russia's escalating provocations, Poland is rapidly enhancing its defensive capabilities, including a missile defense facility known as Aegis Ashore, operational since September 2023. This facility, part of NATO's integrated air and missile defense system, is designed to intercept ballistic missiles in mid-flight, providing critical protection to Poland's skies. While Russia has criticized the presence of Aegis Ashore as a threat to its security, NATO maintains that it is solely for defensive purposes. What many may not know is that this facility is vulnerable to attack by conventional cruise missiles, which are not part of the system's intercept capabilities. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. As the Aegis Ashore facility becomes operational, Poland and its allies are increasingly focused on the threat posed by Russian missiles, including hypersonic weapons. There are suggestions that a ground version of the SM-6 missile is being developed to counter this threat, raising the stakes of the conflict. Poland's efforts to modernize its defenses are not just a response to Russia, but an acknowledgement that Europe is now in a much more unpredictable security environment. However, the unexpected twist is the potential vulnerability of Aegis Ashore to attacks by Russian cruise missiles, a vulnerability which exposes Poland to a new level of danger. The future is uncertain, but this is not the end of the story, not by a long shot. Conclusion. As you have witnessed, the situation is not merely about airspace violations, but about a deeper struggle for power and influence in Eastern Europe. The events in Poland are a warning sign. We now know that we are at the beginning of a new type of warfare. A more dangerous era is now upon us. What will be the next move? The question remains, and only time will tell.